You built your own bottling machine. So where does that where does that come into play in the scheme of things here? You were acquiring equipment, but at some point you're just like, were you canning to begin with, or were you
No,
hand
there wasn't any
bottling,
cans. It was hard even to get bottles. No way you could get cans back then. No one would ever sell you cans unless you had truckloads you wanted to bring
you had
in
to buy
and
like
store
millions
somewhere.
of them.
And back then, everybody, the can was actually looked at as a lower quality product, and it probably was. The liners have been significantly improved on them since then. But the space we had was very small. It was about 2,500 square feet. We didn't have a dock at our old place. It had like a front door and a back door, and you just brought everything in and out on a dolly. And so I couldn't really fit a bottling machine in it. And so I thought, well, I'll just build a one-headed filler. I still have it over in our warehouse, but it could do about a bottle a minute. And so that was kind of our tap room in a way. You could sit there and say, well, I'll put a bottle in, and then we end up selling them loose. We didn't have a six-packs. But that was craft beer back in the early 90s.
Yeah. A bottle a minute.
That was one bottle a minute, but I figured we sold it for $1 a piece, I remember.
Wow.
And the stores are going there. And we figured, well, you're making 60 bottles an hour. You're making $60, and you only probably have $20 in cost, so that's a pretty good,
Yeah.
And that's the way we looked at it, and it paid the bills.
So what do your fillers do now? How many a minute?
We go about 220 bottles a minute when it really cranks.
It's quite a jump.
Yeah, a little bit.
Wow.
There you go.
Crazy.
And all the brewing is done here.
Yes.
On site. You don't have. You've got a warehouse, obviously.
We take the beer off site to store there.
Yeah.
That warehouse is actually larger in this building.
Is it?
But
Okay.
in square footage. But you have to have about a square foot per barrel when you build a brewery. So we have about 45,000 square feet.
Okay.
That is about what you have, and that's what you look at.
The name Lakefront Brewery, because I want to talk about this building a little bit, but going back to when you started, you had your first building.
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with where the name Lakefront Brewery started with, or is it just because Milwaukee is a lakefront city?
Mostly because of Milwaukee has a lakefront city.
Yeah.
Lakefront meant water, which goes into beer. Milwaukee, when you say it the lakefront, we're the only town that really calls the lakefront instead of a waterfront or oceanfront. So we thought the name was indigenous to Milwaukee, and in reality it was probably a little bit too deep for people to gather, and we probably should have called it a different name, but it stuck. And when I moved down here, I thought, should I change it to Riverfront? But we moved down here, and so now you get comments like, oh, they don't know what body of water they're on, and things of that sort. But everybody still knows it's lakefront, and everybody comes down here. They appreciate the water, and technically we're Lake Michigan level here, on the river. So we're still kind of like the lakefront.
Yeah, that's true.
We're international boundary.
Right out back here,
we actually get the Coast Guard coming up and down.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, just literally right outside the windows here, there is the river is. So we're actually on lakefront or Lake Michigan level here. So
yes.
Now, this building, how did this building come about? I know the story, but what did this building used to be? You can tell everybody.
It used to be a power plant, and it was a power plant for most of its early life. And then the electric company ran their underground division out of here, repaired the streetcars here. And eventually they sold it in the 60s to the city of Milwaukee for their forestry department. And we ended up buying it from the city of Milwaukee. We got kind of lucky in that there's an apartment complex next door, and the city was helping finance that to become a apartment complex to rejuvenate the neighborhood. And they also were putting in a $10 million street in the front. So they were looking at people to come on down. But back when we bought it 20 years ago, it was not the best neighborhood. And so the city was looking for somebody to come down here to be in this building. And if we would not have moved in, the city would have had to have torn it down. Oh. And it's a massive structure. You go downstairs, they got 5 feet, thick concrete pillars down there to support the old electrical generators that were here when it was a power plant. So it would not have been an easy thing to tear it. It would have been a big, hard part. And so anyway, the city offered us a very good price, almost nothing for it. But back then there was a lot of money to put in to fix it up. And we're still fixing the building up today.
Really?
After 20 years of doing this improvement and that improvement. So that's one thing about a historical building is that it continues to be updated.
It's a great looking building. I mean, first time we came here, I was like, this place is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the building's cool. You got this structure outside that's very industrial looking. I mean, just some roads and the river being out back. It's just a really, really neat setting.
Yeah,
to come down here.
it is. It is about as Milwaukee can be. You got an old industrial building right on the river, a Cream City brick building. Got a brewery here. We do a Friday night fish fry. Right next to a big industrial, massive bridge right next to it, on the Riverwalk. Everything that Milwaukee kind of stands for is here. So. So it's fun. One of the biggest compliments I get is people saying, I had a friend in from out of town. We didn't know what to do, and we came down to your place.
Yeah.
To show them, this represents the town, and so that means a lot to me.
Yeah, and we'll definitely go outside and get some shots of the building and the bridge that's out there and the river and everything afterwards, so you guys can all see what we're talking about here. I'm looking at your website right now, and you've got a section on about Lakefront, about historical preservation. And there's some talking here about the lights that are out front, and it looks like there's a connection here to the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team.
With the chalet.
Yeah,
we have the chalet and the lights here, so that's kind of things I thought was nice amenities, and I brought in the lights, especially that we see up here. That we have those are built in 1917.
Oh, wow.
I believe, and that's when.
Tour time.
All right.
Tour time. Everybody get your tour going.
get going on tour. It's awesome.
But I know Frank Lloyd Wright was in town at that time. He lived here, but I have nothing to tie it to him. But they were taken out of the Plankington Hotel. I spent a bunch of money renovating or refurbishing them, and that's what I got. They fit the building perfectly from the same age of the building, and they work good. And then I was able to acquire Bernie Brewer Chalet when they tore down County Stadium, and got the giant beer mug, and that's in here. So that was
and that's
a lot of pictures taken in front of it.
Right behind us.
Right behind us, yeah. Over there.